Professor Alexander L. Baugh, Professor of Church History and Doctrine at BYU, and we're listening to Gospel Tangents.
Violin music by Becca Greenouch.
Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. We're continuing a conversation with Dr. Alex Baugh from BYU. In our next conversation, we'll talk about why Jackson County residents got so upset and severely beat Bishop Edward Partridge and W.W. Phelps. We'll talk about the reasons behind this and how the Mormons were expelled from Jackson County. Check out our conversation. W.W. Phelps published a very inflammatory, I guess, or I don't know if that's the best word for it, article on free people of color. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Well,
yeah, just on that, Rick. Of course, he's the editor and the publisher, I guess you might say, of the Evening and the Morning Star. And in July, he did publish an editorial called Free People of Color. Basically, what he was saying in there was that we for free blacks to come to Missouri, it's going to have big problems. And he wasn't encouraging them to come. He was basically saying, you look at the statutes of Missouri, this is going to be very difficult for them. But of course, the locals kind of turned that all around and said that Phelps and the church was inviting the free blacks to come to Missouri, and that's really not what he was doing.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, of course, they would see this as an excuse to say, I'm sure they're fearful of slave uprising. There's no question. They don't, and Indian uprising on the frontier and slave uprising in Missouri. So that's a very volatile subject.
So Mormons are too friendly to blacks and too friendly to Indians.
Well, I wouldn't say too friendly, but again, we're Northerners, and Phelps clearly understood the laws associated with Missouri slavery in Missouri, and he's just saying he's not welcoming. He says it's going to be tough if they come here, where we're trying to settle. So, but they took that all the wrong way, and probably intentionally to some degree, and made it a big issue. And he writes a disclaimer, but it was too late by that time.
Day, right?
Yeah. So anyway, but they're really worried about slave uprising.
Okay.
Nat Turner's rebellion just happened. Was it 32 in Virginia and so on? So they're concerned that could happen.
Because this is 1832 when he publishes this.
Actually, it's 1833.
Was it 33?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So
1833 he publishes this.
That's the powder keg.
Yeah.
That gets them going, and then of course within just a matter of days, they're calling for a citizen committee to warn the Mormons that it's time you leave. This is not working. And we have increased immigration. Mormons continue to come. That's why I say they're worried about the numbers. And so in July, they basically...
Joseph was telling everybody, come to Missouri, right?
Well...
Even though he was in Kirtland at the time?
Yes, but at the same time, they knew they had to do it systematically. And the idea was that people would come and consecrate and have something to actually give to Bishop Partridge down there in the church. They didn't want all the poor just kind of coming down saying, no, we're here, please take care of us, give us land. So we probably immigrated a little bit too quickly, some people. That doesn't mean some did not bring something to the table, but the encouragement was eventually, their thought was Zion will be established in and around Jackson County and Independence. But the numbers coming down, the problems we're having that we just talked about, socially, politically, slaves, so on, that was enough to say this is not good, and they were willing as a citizen committee to say, hey, we really expect you guys to leave, and we're just not going to mix well. So unfortunately, of course, they resulted in violence, and 3 days later, a Mormon committee said we will agree to leave.
Well, and apparently there was a bunch of mobs in Missouri that attacked the press.
Yeah, right, on the 20th, yeah. And
the 20th
of July, 1833.
Okay.
And they tarred and feathered, because Partridge said, hey, now hold it. Bishop Partridge, of course, went to the church leaders. He's right there in Independence. He's the figurehead leader of the church there, and they said, we have some ultimatums here. There was 4 or 5 ultimatums, and of course he didn't want to agree to any of them. He said, give us a little time. They refused to allow that.
They said, just get out.
Yeah, they just said...
We're going to destroy your press. They've already destroyed
well,
the press.
they said, if you don't sign this, you'll suffer some consequences. And he utterly refused. He asked for some time so they could consult with Joseph. They gave him no time. They hadn't even given him time to consult with other leaders in other settlements in Jackson County, the Lyman White and the Prairie Settlement and the Colesville. He's in Independence. He's 9, 10, 12 miles away from these other groups of Mormon settlers. He's just given sign or else, and he's going no way. And so they took more aggressive action and went and got him and pulled him into the north part of the town square and northwest corner and tarred and feathered him and another Latter-day Saint. And then they went over to Phelps's printing press just a block away, and ransacked the building, destroyed the press and type, and they were going to do some other damage to some of the local properties of the church. And fortunately, again, things kind of settled down, but 3 days later, the Mormon leaders agreed that they would leave. Half of them would leave Jackson County by the 1st of January 1834, and then the rest would leave by the latter part of April 1834. So they were giving us time to get our crops in, sell their properties and so on. Unfortunately, and this could go into a whole nother discussion, but immediately, of course, the church leaders dispatched messengers to Kirtland to try to find out what to do. And eventually, of course, they came back and they felt like they had a right to legally press charges and to try to legally find ways that they could remain. And then the decision was made that only the church leaders would leave by that time. And then they said, no way. And this is when they actually carried out violent attacks against the different Mormon settlements to say, if you're going to renege on that agreement, we'll send you out. We'll kick you out right now. So they resorted to violence. And unfortunately, Mormons, of course, they're going to defend themselves. I mean, so this violence erupted in some deaths. That we kill a couple of people at what they call the Battle Above the Blue, out there by the Whitmer settlement. They kill one of our people. I mean, it just escalated. Violence escalates very quickly. And finally they said, you're out of here. And they just gave us a matter of days. And so about 1,200 Latter-day Saints were forced out of Jackson County the first week of November, 1833. So they didn't give them until 1st of January or April.
Oh.
Those 2 dates. They said, you're gone. In the meantime, the Mormons had sought legal help from none other than the law firm of Atchison's up there in Clay County, and we'd already hired an attorney. There was 4 attorneys there. We had Alexander Donovan, an up-and-coming attorney, said, I'll help the Mormons. Let's see what we can do for them. So I think that was another reason the Mormons had nowhere to go. We weren't going to go further south or further into Lafayette County, but across the river, things were different in terms of politics. There was a good mixture of Whigs and Democrats. Our attorney was there, our attorneys.
In Clay County,
particularly Donovan. I think they encouraged us to come there. The locals up there were a little more hospitable. They said, we don't plan on you living here forever, but you're welcome to come here. We were seen as a workforce. We were seen as a dynamic political force as well. So we were able to live in Clay County in relative peace for almost 3 years. And then by 1836, the citizens in Clay County are getting a little restless again. We didn't expect the Mormons to stay here forever. And that's when, again, Donovan, our attorney, and by this time he's now a state legislator. He represents Clay County in the Missouri legislature, so he proposes this county be created a little further north above Ray County, and says maybe we can create a county exclusively for the Mormons. And I'm sure everybody at the time thought that's a great solution. And so in 1836, they create Caldwell County for the Mormons, and we begin moving up in that area. Now, not everybody left, but most of them did.
Okay.
So it's kind of that's the quick look at things. But Jackson County not good to us. Clay County a lot better. They were a little more reasonable. They were. This is where we get the first term about Jack Mormons.
I'm so glad you went there. I just had a conversation with somebody, Brian Stutzman. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
You know Brian?
I do know Brian.
Oh, yeah. So, because there was a dispute, because I had heard that Alexander Donovan was the first Jack Mormon, and he thought it was somebody in Illinois. I'm trying to remember.
No, it's definitely not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the term Jack Mormon comes from the Clay County experience. Those people in Clay County, and there weren't many in Jackson, but those people in Clay County who were open to the Mormons, trying to be helpful. For example, Michael Arthur, he was a slave owner, had a little plantation, you'd say, right there. He hired Lyman White and a number of other men to work on his property and to work for him. And he was very kind to the Latter-day Saints, let us have our meetings there. He was considered, quote, a Jack Mormon, one who was not a Mormon but was kind to them. And Donovan would have been a Jack Mormon as well. He was not going to join our church, but he saw that there was some injustices, social, political, legal injustices conducted against us, and he was willing to defend us. So he would have been considered a Jack Mormon.
Okay.
So that term really originated in Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. In fact,
Yeah.
we had a little dispute there, and I was like, I couldn't remember Donovan's name at the time, but yeah. That's
yeah.
Because we've even had, I remember I taught primary, and we there was a lesson, and it talked about Alexander Donovan, he's in our church history.
He's one good man.
Yeah.
He's a great man, and he came to the assistance of the saints again. He was a man of justice, and that's why the biographer, which is Roger Lanius, who was a Community of Christ, RLDS, excellent biography on Donovan, and he called him a man of justice. That's the subtitle right in there. Alexander Donovan, man of justice. He looked at the underprivileged, to the ones who were being picked on, and came to their defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Alex Baugh from BYU. In our next conversation, we'll talk about more persecution in Missouri. Joseph Smith actually went to Governor Boggs, and I was a little bit surprised at Governor Boggs' reaction.
They go down to DeWitt in Carroll County, and for 10 days they literally surrounded the Mormon community and starved them out. And Mormons finally capitulate and say, we'll leave. They go to far west. Joseph petitions the governor, Governor Boggs, and says, hey, you've got to come here. We are really getting picked on. And Governor Boggs says, hey, it's between the Mormons and the mobs. You took it. I can't call out the state militia for every one of these little uprisings.
If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, please support Gospel Tangents and become a subscriber. For just $5 a month, go to patreon.com/gospeltangents, and you can hear the entire interview. And you can also get transcripts available at either our Amazon website, or if you want to give the money to me and not Amazon, please subscribe on my website at gospeltangents.com, and you can click the yellow subscribe button. Of course, we're also on Facebook, Twitter, and all the other places. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes at tinyurl.com/gospeltangents. And don't forget to click here to subscribe on YouTube, here for a transcript, and over here we've got some more of our great videos. Thanks again for listening.